Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Now, some of us are cutting edge, some of us are not cutting edge. So just before we started doing this episode of the Paracast, Chris tells me he's reading a magazine. Now, that may not seem so unusual, but I have a feeling here in 2015 it is unusual for people to read magazines, for people to read books and magazines.
Well, it's actually a catalog. So, I do get them from time to time in the mail, but I do occasionally read magazines. Of course, I write for the World Explorers magazine, and I do the Crypto Corner feature every issue. And I like reading Nexus, Atlantis Rising is another one that I read occasionally. Sometimes I'll stumble across some music magazines like Mojo or some of the, I like the European English ones. But more and more of my information is coming from the net, like everybody else. And unfortunately, I think the heyday of the magazine and newspaper is long past.
Yeah, it's hard to look at these magazines that are cutting out the print versions. Of course, in the computer business, PC World magazine, I believe, stopped the print version last year. And some months later, Macworld magazine stopped the print version in the US. In the UK, there's still a printed version. But this is where things are going. Obviously, the immediacy of the internet is an excellent factor. The fact that a story could be wrong and corrected on the spot, or that new information could be added. And certainly you don't have the space constraints of print, where a magazine article may have to be 600 words, for example. But you need 1,000 words to tell it. But online, if the publisher has the budget, okay, do 1,000 words. The internet is the great equalizer because you don't need $1 million or $1 billion publishing combine to get your stuff out in print. You just need a blog, a free copy of WordPress, and you may or may not gain traction.
You may or may not.
And if you don't, you'll go back to your day job if you have one.
Exactly.
In any case, I was thinking here as if we were editing last week's episode with our guest, Mr. Rojas. He is one fascinating gentleman, and he seems to be less acceptance of things than I might have felt from the choice of guests over at the International UFO Conference.
Yeah, he's kind of between a rock and a hard place, really. I have a sense that, they have to tread that line of getting good quality speakers, who actually are presenting relevant cutting edge research, and yet making sure that at least some of the speakers have a big enough draw factor to put butts in the chairs, and they do have 1,500 chairs to fill there, and it's not an inexpensive event to put on. So they do kind of run the risk of, which I think back in, for instance, in 2012, they had some of the more Yahoo type folks there that I personally had some problems with. Stan Romanek, Stephen Greer, people like that. I really think don't deserve the amount of attention and notoriety that they have. Myself, personally, that's my feelings. But I think it's important to note that this year you don't see any of that sort of grandstanding type presenter on the roster of speakers, and I think it's a very good, well-rounded lineup, and I applaud them. Of course,
we have Jaime Maussan. Obviously, he's a little questionable.
I don't think Jaime's there this year, is he?
He's on the list.
Oh, is he?
If you go to ufocongress.com, and by the way, this episode will be heard on the final day of the event, I believe, or a day or two before the event ends. And if you look at the second row of speakers, Jaime Maussan, Richard Dolan, and some character named O'Brien.
I haven't been to that particular page in quite a while, since I was announced. Okay, well, I stand corrected. Again, I did see Jaime's presentation in November, and like I said, he did have there was a number of clips that he had that were just jaw-droppingly important. I mean, very, very good, just real head scratchers that passed my smell test. And
he had a few others that you scratch your head and wonder, why did he have them there?
Well, the majority of his shots were equivocal, and there were obvious hoaxes sprinkled in there too as well. I think the ones that are the most difficult to really ascertain what they are obviously the nighttime lights, those types of things. There was a number of Chinese lanterns that were obvious to me. I think there were some drones lit up that were flying around, and we're going to be seeing more and more footage of objects at night.
Well, during the day, you'll see the Amazon drones very soon, delivering all your merchandise through Amazon Prime or Super Drone Prime or whatever they do when they get those services running.
Wow. That's just hard to believe. I mean, gosh, we're in the 21st century, aren't we?
Well, I'm thinking of the scene in the movie The Fifth Element when you first see the row upon row of hover cars.
Right.
And such a gritty neighborhood. I think the special effects on that film are probably the best because it makes it feel as if you're in a real world. As wacky as the dialogue is, as wacky as some of the scenes are, the actual effects of living in a very crowded society several centuries hence seem so realistic. Why are we talking about that? The other thing that impressed me, by the way,
why are you talking about it? Don't lump me in on that. I'm like scratching my head going, where did that come from?
Sounds like the old Tonto joke. What do you mean we, Kimosabi? Anyway, he's just going to let me hang in the wind and swing there until I rise or fall. And if I had a hover car, I'd be rising, of course. But let's get back to last week's show with Mr. Rojas. And the one thing that did interest me and impress me is his very realistic approach to UFO abductions. I thought he had a lot of interesting information there, especially about hypnotic regression. We mentioned that in the After the Paracast episode for last week's show. Yeah. So I would refer you to that to get more of our insights. But the point is here that I don't see how it's even possible to use hypnotic regression to enhance one's memories of a UFO abduction incident, especially if you have no conscious memory. It doesn't work. I don't see how it could.
Well, again, I just, there's so much work that needs to be done in that arena. And anyone that feels that they are having these types of experiences, they should definitely go to someone, a psychologist, and who doesn't have an interest in the paranormal, in UFOs and aliens, that has no experience dealing with it. Because if you get somebody that's of an opinion one way or another, it's going to adversely affect the quality of your care. And if you got to get yourself hypnotically regressed, make sure that the regressionist doesn't know why you're there. For instance, there's just, and Alejandro brought up some very good points, being someone that, has a degree in psychology, was certified as a hypnotherapist. He brought up some very good points that the human mind is incredibly malleable in certain relaxed states. And I can't stress enough how important that is to remember, especially if you're someone that feels that they have been victimized in the manner that we're describing. So,
do the right thing. You got to be careful. In 15 seconds or less, Chris O'Brien, tell us about our guest this week.
Well, Dr. John Brandenburg is an amazing guy. He's a plasma physicist. He's worked at some of the national labs. He's an incredibly bright guy. He's come up with some mind-warping revelations about a possible nuclear war on Mars. This is going to be a fascinating episode on the Paracast, and I just can't wait. This is going to be so much fun.
Yes, indeed. Dr. John Brandenburg coming with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and the Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Hi, this is Steve Spillum for Midas Resources. In 1971, President Nixon took the United States off the gold standard and put us into a fiat currency. This allowed Congress and the Federal Reserve to create trillions of dollars out of thin air. The national debt has risen to incredible heights, and your hard-earned dollars by a small fraction of what they once did. The average life expectancy for a fiat currency is 27 years. The dollar is failing and on borrowed time. When currencies fall, people turn to gold and silver because gold and silver have been real money for more than 5,000 years. It is our mission at Midas Resources to help you preserve your capital. Don't let your personal savings shrink to nothing. For important free information on how you can protect your personal wealth, contact me, Steve Spillum, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 308. Call today while we are still accepting dollars for gold and silver. 1-800-686-2237, extension 308. Make a change in your financial security today. That's 1-800-686-2237, extension 308.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right. That's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100-foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
What good is a Big Berkey water filter?
We get that question a lot here at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And in a word, the answer is protection. Protection from water main breaks, E. coli contamination, environmental chemical spills, pesticide runoff, chlorine taste and smell, and all forms of fluoride. Plus, Big Berkey water filters are the original gravity water filter system and most trusted on the market for a reason. Tested by multiple independent NSF EPA certified labs, they are the gold standard in water purification. At only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. That means big savings. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get a Big Berkey today at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit our website or call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
You're on the Paracast with Gene and Chris. We've got Dr. John Brandenburg joining us in a moment about his new book, Death on Mars, which has nothing to do with the TV shows called Life on Mars. We'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, we've added something new to the Paracast Plus. That's our special feature where you get the version of the Paracast free of the network ads. 41 minutes of network ads are cut out. You get the After the Paracast podcast and all that. And people have been saying to us, we'd like an easy way to know when a new episode is up, like they call it an RSS feed, which notifies them about the episode, or they can download it in a podcast app like Downcast for iOS. Well, we've got a preliminary version of that feature out now that you can access from the, as they say, premium area of our forums.
Yay!
Hopefully it'll be complete and fully debugged by the time you hear this episode. In any case, to learn more about the Paracast Plus and how to subscribe, go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. We have Dr. John Brandenburg here, and his latest book is called Death on Mars, The Discovery of a Planetary Nuclear Massacre. Now, Dr. Brandenburg, thanks for coming back on the show. So let me look at the obvious implications of the title here, and that is a nuclear massacre. Is obviously something that we had Martians years ago, billions of years ago, and they destroyed themselves?
Actually, that's not what it looks like. We have, first of all, scientific evidence, nuclear data, spectroscopic data from the surface of what appears to have been two enormous nuclear weapon explosions. And the isotopes give weapon signature. That's how we know that they were weapons. And they went off in midair, like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then if you look, where are the locations of the ground zeros of these two enormous explosions? They're directly downwind of them, where the shock waves and the fallout would have been most severe, is Cydonia Mensa and another place called Galaxis Chaos, which has another face on Mars, it turns out there. It looks a lot like the first one, slightly smaller. And all of that is shown in the book, the most recent photographs of these sites confirming that this is what looks like eroded archaeology. It looks, however, though these weapons had to have been basically dropped from space. And if you look at the new pictures taken by all the latest probes of Galaxis Chaos and Cydonia Mensa, this looks like a primitive civilization. It looks like Bronze Age. There's no airports, there's no freeways, there's nothing that we would associate with an advanced civilization. It looks like ancient Egypt or the Mayans or something. So you basically apparently had an indigenous culture on Mars, dating from a time when Mars was more Earth-like. And it developed its own intelligence, who apparently looked a lot like us, built things that look like us, that look like we build. And then for some reason, somebody came along and nuked them with a planet burner, 2 planet burners. The biggest explosion looks like it was caused by a bomb as big as the Empire State Building.
Before we move on here, John, I've got to stop you and
sure.
And for we have a reputation here on the show of trying to ask tough questions here. And having read the book, you're making some pretty definitive statements here, and right. I think we're getting the cart ahead of the horse.
Speaking scientifically, it is of course hypothetical until we've actually proven it.
Right, however, because we don't have any evidence whatsoever that's been publicly acknowledged that any sort of intelligent life or complex life existed on Mars. Yeah. But let's go ahead and first of all, before we get into your hypotheses about possible motivations for these events, let's look at the science first about how we know that something catastrophic happened on Mars.
Right.
We're talking about a planet that we're finding out more and more now. As each month that goes by, basically, we're finding out more and more. But why don't you address the layer of radiation and some of the science that has been withheld from the public, because you're not a Martian rocket scientist.
No,
you're a scientist of a different stripe. And why don't you explain, first of all, give our new listeners who perhaps weren't here when you were first on a couple of years back, give them a sense of how you got interested in this subject to begin with, and how you stumbled on some really sensational information that has not been divulged by the folks at JPL and at NASA and other places. It kind of give us a sense, set the stage a little bit before we go too far into your theories.
Well, the book I wrote is a kind of partly autobiographical. It's an account of a young scientist just out of graduate school with a bright, shiny PhD, arriving at another, and I went to school at a nuclear weapons lab where we were trying to harness fusion energy for the benefit of mankind. And part of what I studied there was laser fusion, which is trying to miniaturize the hydrogen bomb the motivation for laser fusion is the hydrogen bombs work. If we could just make them little tiny things as big as a aspirin, then we could set them off with lasers and harness power that way. So part of my schooling to get my PhD was I was studying laser fusion. And to do that, you need to have a basic working knowledge of how nuclear weapons work, because you're trying to basically emulate that success on a large scale and, make it a micro-sized thing. So I arrived at my new place of work, which was another government lab called Sandia Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I arrived there with, basic knowledge of how nuclear weapons worked and everything like that, even though I had never worked on them directly. We were in the middle of the Cold War. This was 1982, and the Reagan era had just begun, and the Cold War became very intense. And people at the labs, interestingly enough, had a kind of blasé attitude about nuclear war. They saw nuclear weapons being carted by on trucks every day sometimes, and at Sandia Labs, because they were being stored in a mountain out in the desert called Mountains on a Mountain. So they were kind of used. They kind of had this idea that, as they described it to me, that the nuclear war broke out. They were going to get the wife and kids and head for the hills, and everything was going to be fine. They felt that like they controlled the nuclear fire, and so therefore it wouldn't burn them. And what happened was, when we were there, the nuclear war scare was getting kind of intense. Remember the movie Day After came out, and then what happened also was, because of a dust storm on Mars that had covered the entire planet of Mars from pole to pole back in 1971 during the Mariner 9 mission, Sagan and some other group of scientists had analyzed this spectacular dust storm on Mars that covered the entire planet for 6 months.
Let's explain what happened next in our follow-up segment with Dr. John Brandenburg. We're talking about death on Mars with Gene and Chris. Alive on Earth, I think. You're in
the Paracast.
Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Hi, this is Larry Smith. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. When the cleaners ruined some special clothing, all they could do was show us a sign that said they weren't responsible. But when they got the letter from one of our Legal Shield attorneys, he promptly gave us a check for $1,152. Worry less and live more with lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com, or call 855-340-SAVE. That's 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
This is Tim Austin, Senior Vice President of Kmart. Our company is working together with the March of Dimes through March for Babies to raise money and awareness about the serious problem of premature birth in the U.S. As a business leader, I know that babies born very sick or too soon cost businesses billions of dollars each year. That's why Kmart is committed to raising funds through our employees, customers, family, and friends to improve the health of moms and babies everywhere. Won't you please join us in March for Babies? Start a team today at marchforbabies.org.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
The Freeze-Dry Guy presents freeze-dried turkey, freeze-dried ham, and the no-bake casserole unit February sale. Listen, if you trust the Freeze-Dry Guy, as thousands have for their emergency food supply since 1970, don't wait to hear how great this deal is, because it's unlimited supply. Call 866-404-3663 and ask for our new turkey and ham unit. Normal retail price $359.94. Sale price $251.94. You save $108. And it's chock full of high-quality, great-tasting freeze-dried diced turkey and ham from Mountain House, the gold standard in long-term storage products. Or get the Freeze-Dry Guy's no-bake casserole unit. 153 servings per case at normal retail price of $215.94. Sale price $172.75. You save $43.19. But supplies are limited, and we always pay shipping right to your door within the lower 48 states. Call 866-404-3663 and make FreezeDryGuy.com a favorite and check for monthly specials. Don't miss the Freeze-Dry Guy's February sale. Call 866-404-3663 or visit FreezeDryGuy.com.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Gene and Chris are live on Earth. Dr. John Brandenburg wrote about death on Mars. We're going back to the 70s, this 6-month-long dust storm on Mars.
Right.
Let's move on.
Yes, and this dust storm really got everyone's head scratching at JPL, and they suddenly realized that such an occurrence could occur on Earth in the event of a nuclear war, that you could get a smoke and dust in the Earth's atmosphere that would just stay up there for 6 months, and you would have a nuclear winter. So the nuclear winter came from Mars, studies of Mars. What happened at the nuclear lab where I was working on directed energy weapons. We were trying to shoot lightning bolts through the sky, make them fly straight. A wave of depression went through my coworkers because suddenly they realized that, as my office mate, in fact, told me, he says, I used to think I was going to, if a nuclear war started, I was going to drive home, get my wife and kids in the car, head for the hills. Now I'm just going to get up on the roof with a 6-pack of beer and watch the whole thing go, he says. I asked him, I said, what kind of beer do you think you'd be drinking?
Chill Wills and Dr. Strangelove trying to unhook the H-bomb in the bomber's bay. And,
right.
Riding the thing down to ground zero, going yeehaw.
Yeehaw.
No darn
so
mountains are targeted by God knows how many nuclear weapons.
Albuquerque was targeted by at least 100 nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
There was a nuclear weapons storage site out in the desert nearby.
One of the largest, I think, in the world.
Yeah, in fact, that figured in the Benowitz case.
Yeah, you were at the lab about the same time that Benowitz was going.
I drove by his sign of his company every day in the morning.
Right, Thunder Electric, I think.
Corporation.
Right? Thunder Corporation.
And so what happened was I had had a desire to basically just block it out. I didn't even think about a nuclear war. I just thought, well, I'll be dead, and that's fine. But this depression kind of seeped into me also. So a lot of people became interested in some kind of way to end the Cold War. I mean, we talked about, like at our church, where a lot of the people I worked with went to church. They formed what's called a peacemaking group. So there was a lot of really deep concern about nuclear war and, the danger of nuclear war that would destroy everything. We weren't going to recover from it. And so what happened then was I was sitting at home on the day after Christmas in 1983, just after we had gone through one of these big international crises. And there came on the program of this thing about the face on Mars, which I'd never seen before. It completely sandbagged me. I was completely blindsided by it. Normally, I was very much concentrated on my work and trying to be, fit in and everything and not be interested in anything outside of work. And suddenly this show comes on about the face on Mars, showing Vince DiPietro and Greg Molinar's work, and they had 2 pictures of this thing. And I thought, when the show was advertised, I expected to be something like Flash Gordon Goes to Mars or something, or an eggplant that looks like Richard Nixon, something like this. And then they showed what looks like a carved face, and I was just completely astonished. I'd never been exposed to that before. And so I immediately decided to contact them. And what my motivation was is I thought, oh my God, this looks like a sign of a dead civilization on Mars. That's just the thing to end the Cold War. That was my thought at the time. I thought if we find a dead civilization on Mars, then the Russians and the United States will have to cooperate and go to Mars. And so
some people think that we already did that in the early 60s, but continue.
Yeah. So that was my immediate motivation, was that, gee, this could be a real godsend to help end the Cold War. So I became involved in an organization called the Independent Mars Investigation Team, organized by Dick Hoagland. And we investigated the face, and we validated very quickly. It was a lot of it was concentrated in Silicon Valley. So we got the original data tapes from DiPietro and Molinar and verified that, through NASA that they were the original tapes, and did our own enhancements. DiPietro and Molinar had done such good work and documented it so well that we were able to quickly validate it. And, they'd also found a pyramid within 5 kilometers of the face. And
a lot of people would take exception to those statements, but they're certainly free to do so. But we were a group of scientists and engineers, and we just decided finally at the end, by consensus, that this did in fact look like eroded remains of some dead civilization. So we went to a Mars conference and published it. We also, in the meantime, and I had kind of taken a lead in this, I said that, gee, it looks like there was an old ocean shoreline near Cydonia.
Doctor, before we go on.
Yes.
Richard Hoagland, the things he says are highly, highly disputed, as you well know.
Dick Hoagland is a brilliant guy, and he has his own evolved set of hypotheses about Mars.
Yes, they definitely have evolved since 1984.
They have evolved, and in fact,
he's also incredibly in love with himself.
What's that?
Also incredibly in love with himself. He's
well, let's just say that I was happy to work with old Dick Hoagland during this Independent Mars Investigation Team, and we went to a conference and published our results at Boulder, Colorado, and the effect on the other Mars scientists was they looked astonished at the amount of work we'd done. And one of them came up to me afterwards and said, well, we don't know what to think about the pictures, but we really liked your Mars ocean, your picture of Earth. Mars is more Earth-like in the past with this ocean.
And this is important to note, listeners, that Dr. Brandenburg was the first one to really ID that the northern hemisphere of Mars was pretty much covered by an ocean. Before that, there had been really no talk of this, and your intuition eventually was proven out.
Absolutely. I went to at the urging of this one scientist named Mars scientist named Hal Mazurkowski. He was unfortunately passed on. I went to a conference in Washington, D.C., where I actually got a new job in Washington, D.C. on the Star Wars defense thing. And I went to a conference, though, and presented the paper on the Mars ocean to an audience of probably about 1,000 Mars scientists. And they really ate it up. And what's funny, though, is because I'd been involved in the Cydonia investigation, none of them would give me credit for it. So finally, Wikipedia is finally giving me credit. If people talk about the Mars ocean, they never mention my name. But now Wikipedia has corrected the history books.
Well, it's always good to get acknowledgement for your work, you know.
And so if you look on Wikipedia about Mars ocean hypothesis, I'm reference number 1.
Yes, but the key about Wikipedia is that that's kind of a peer-to-peer sort of encyclopedia. So it's what people put on it that is not disputed by other people that gets listed, whether it's true or not. That's not really validation, is it?
Oh, well, it's better than no validation at all, which is what I have right now. I am he who must not be cited on Mars.
Yeah.
That's okay. Credit I can get from a bank. It's a question of, the important thing is that people picked up on the Mars ocean idea, and it became
it's been proven. It's proven out.
It's basically been proven out.
It's part of the lexicon now.
It is part of the lexicon that Mars used to have an ocean. And by the way, if Mars had an ocean, stuff swam in it. You can't. The ocean is where life started on Earth. That Mars ocean, by the way, lasted most of Mars' geologic history. You can tell that because it's on the young part of Mars, not the old part. Mars has a split personality geologically.
Let's get into what the split personality is and whether I have one. Dr. John Brandenburg is with us. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast. Great minds think alike. The network for the independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network. GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
As the New World Order continues to tighten its grip on every facet of our lives, we're all asking ourselves, how can we maintain our independence? The answer is clear. Get prepared, and you get prepared now. Now the only question left is, where do we begin? My Patriot Supply is here to help. Call 800-247-3070 to get started with your 72-hour emergency food supply for only $10. We're even covering the cost of shipping. Are you willing to rely on the government and FEMA in the event of an emergency? Call 800-274-3070 to get started with your 72-hour emergency food supply for only $10. You won't be able to find this deal online, and there is a strict limit of 4 per caller, so don't wait. Call now, 800-274-3070. That's 800-274-3070. Call right now.
So you've been listening to pharmacist Ben and Dr. Wallach for a long time now, and you're wondering if longevity really works. Hi, my name is Adam. I'm an employee at GCN, and I've been using longevity products for over 2 years now. Call me today to hear my story at 612-695-5982. You too can lose weight, experience increased energy, and feel better about yourself and the future of your family. Call today, 612-695-5982. That's 612-695-5982.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Between segments, when I raised the issue whether I have a split personality, Chris said, well, you finally admitted it.
Good for you, Gene.
Yeah.
Admitting you have a problem is the first sign that you can get well.
That's half the battle, Gene. It's half the battle.
Half the battle.
Now you got to get your other side.
Psychiatrist told me that just before I committed suicide. I was too tough a case.
Oh, boy, this is getting kind of dirty here. We have Dr. John Brandenburg. The book is called Death on Mars, and we're talking about the oceans and about the split personality of Mars.
Split personality of Mars.
Tell us more.
Mars has what's called a dichotomy, meaning a split. The southern part of Mars is very ancient looking. It looks like the lunar highlands on the moon, heavily cratered. But in middle of the craters, it's a very science fiction kind of landscape, are river channels leading in and out of the craters. So the craters used to be lakes. Then the southern part of Mars is average of about a mile higher than the north part of Mars, which is smooth plains. Very few craters. In fact, more near the North Pole, the terrains on Mars look basically like Earth. Sand dunes, no craters, river channels. And that's where the ocean was in the north of Mars, meaning the most youngest looking terrain is where the ocean was. That means that for most of Mars history, that ocean was there. And that defines having liquid water means the range of temperatures and atmospheric pressure that basically defines what you call a terrestrial environment. And it's an environment where life can thrive, by the way. One of the most striking things about Mars is that it's red, and they've looked in the Valles Marineris. The rock layers in the wall at the Valles Marineris and what they're seeing with the rovers, they're all bright red. That means highly oxidized iron is there.
Right.
If you look at pictures of Earth from space, they're like the Sahara Desert, it's bright red for the same reason. Because of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere, the iron in the soil becomes what's called hematite, as opposed to black ferrous iron, which is what, basalt, lava flows out of volcanoes are black, like a Hawaiian lava flow.
And basalt is much harder too. I live just down the hill from a huge outcropping of sediment that is slowly, lifting up into the air. And the Colorado Plateau and its whole leading edge is the beautiful red rocks of Sedona, which is very similar.
Oh, Sedona, yes. In fact, that Sedona may have been the origin of Cydonia. Cydonia was an ancient.
What? Wait, sir.
Yes.
Explain what you just said in more detail.
Sedona in Arizona. It's Arizona. Beautiful area. And, of course, the person who named everything on Mars was Percival Lowell, who was in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Right, just up the hill.
Just up the hill. So he was undoubtedly aware of the beautiful landscapes at Sedona. And he basically was naming everything on Mars. He had the best telescope in the world for a while.
Yeah, the first of the super telescopes. It's still there at the Lowell
Still
Observatory.
there and still doing useful work. So he named all the areas of Mars, and he named this one area called Cydonia. And it comes from an ancient Greek city on Crete called Cydonia, which apparently was established by the Phoenicians. So it's Sidon, basically, or from Sidon. You know, like Tyre and Sidon were the great cities of the Phoenicians. And then the Greeks took it over and renamed it Cydonia. But the similarity to Sedona may be not a coincidence. But Percival Lowell isn't here to contradict me, so I'm going to just assert it's true.
Well, and his protege, Clive Tombaugh, was the one that discovered Pluto up at the Lowell Observatory.
Absolutely, up the hill.
Yeah.
Which I still think is a perfectly fine planet, despite what other... But I disagree with other planetary scientists about so many other things that... it's a minor matter. But I will tell you that the idea of giant nuclear explosions on Mars...
Yeah, explain the science, how we know this, and where this
It's
whole theory developed, because there is...
a nice detective story. Basically...
Exactly.
The Russians were the first people to go to Mars with big gamma ray detectors. The Russians, as you know, are very good at nuclear science. And so they orbited probes around Mars in the 70s, and they detected a lot of radioactive potassium, thorium, and uranium on the Mars surface. And that's because the Mars atmosphere is so thin, the gamma rays go right through it. And so they go up into orbit, and you can pick them up from orbit. So they basically found that, there's a lot of radioactive potassium and thorium and uranium on Mars, so it looks the same level as Earth. Then what happened in the 80s is we identified meteorites from Mars. And they checked the meteorites. The meteorites had 1/10 the amount of uranium, thorium, and potassium in them that Earth rocks do. So what it means is the top surface of Mars, the top foot of Mars, is enriched in uranium, thorium, and radioactive potassium.
It's a fairly uniform layer, except around the blast areas that you've ID'd as the blast areas. Explain that.
Well, then they did the Americans finally sent a very precision gamma ray spectrometer using new modern technology. They were able to map all of Mars in gamma rays, and they found out there was 2 big radioactive hotspots on Mars. And one is near Cydonia, and the other is near a place called Utopia. And so they could map, and it's this glaring hotspots, 2 hotspots on Mars in the north, where the ocean was. And so that was one of the clues that something had happened on Mars to make parts of Mars kind of radioactive, and had spread debris from. Apparently, you can see rays of debris coming from these hotspots in gamma rays, and reaching all the way around to the far side of the planet, where there's a minor hotspot where apparently like a shock wave came from these explosions, wrapped all the way around the planet and collided with itself on the far side, leaving another pile of radioactive debris. And I show the maps in the book in color. So what happened, apparently there was some big explosion of some radioactive material on Mars.
Now, how do we factor out any sort of natural occurrence? Well,
I'll get to that in just a second. The atmosphere, as it turns out, is loaded with an isotope called xenon-129. And that isotope is put out by nuclear reactions. And so Mars' atmosphere is loaded with what looks like the residues of an enormous nuclear energy release. and then you have this thin layer on the surface. The Mars meteorites are apparently basement rock. They're bedrock on Mars. Things right on the surface just kind of get blown to the horizon, but they don't escape Mars. You have to kind of dig. The part of the crater that gets dug out is what throws rocks into space that come to Earth. So then the other thing that happened was they looked at some of the meteorites from Mars, and they'd been irradiated with neutrons. So much so that they had to put them in a nuclear reactor to duplicate the amount of nuclear radiation.
I did not know that.
Yes. So I was uncovering this in the literature, and I remembered a comment by a nuclear physicist at Sandia, and I recounted in the book where I was waiting in line to they use a Xerox machine at their library, and I was talking about the strange isotopes in the Mars atmosphere, that the xenon-129 was there, and it was different than any other set of isotopes anywhere in the solar system. Different than Earth, from the solar wind, from rocks from the moon or meteorites, in having this excess of xenon-129. And the guy said, an excess of what? And I said, xenon-129. He said, can I see that? And I had the book. I was Xeroxing the article out of it. It was scientific article about Mars. And he looked at it, and he was kind of a happy-go-lucky fellow. And he just looked like he'd seen a ghost. And he said to me, somebody nuked him.
Well, you know what? Before this show gets nuked, which we can't let happen. You see, we've been around for 9 years, and I want us to be around for another year so we can have our glorious 10th anniversary in 2016. The book is about death on Mars from Dr. John Brandenburg. Joining Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast. Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
Attention listeners, SurvivalLife.com is giving away free EverStrike permanent matches for a limited time only. These matches are waterproof and will light in any weather condition, rain, snow, or sleet. It will still throw a spark. Its built-in ferro rod strikes at 3,000 degrees, and it is good for 15,000 strike. Normally, $15. Today, it's free. Get yours at freewaterproofmatch.com. Again, that's freewaterproofmatch.com. Hurry, supplies are limited. Visit freewaterproofmatch.com today.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
If the IRS has garnished your paycheck or seized money from your bank account, you need to get professional tax help now. Fast action is required to put a halt to these aggressive IRS collection tactics. You can count on the knowledgeable team of tax professionals at Wall & Associates. With over 30 years of experience, Wall & Associates has settled the tax problems of thousands of taxpayers for a small fraction of what they owed. For a free face-to-face consultation, call 1-800-425-4610 to put a wall between you and the IRS. 1-800-425-4610 or look for us on the web at wallandassociates.net. We solve tax problems. If you hire Wall & Associates today, you'll never have to talk to the IRS again. To stop the levies and seizures today, take action now. Call Wall & Associates at 1-800-425-4610. Wall & Associates, 1-800-425-4610. Based on actual cases, results may vary, not a solicitation for legal services.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
So we've added that new RSS feed, that update feed, to the Paracast Plus at plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. You sign up for a membership, 1 month, 1 year, 5 years. If you've joined for a year or 5 years, you get a free book, Stalking the Tricksters from Chris O'Brien. An ebook version will be sent out to you after we get your membership. You get the ad-free version of the Paracast with a higher resolution audio. The After the Paracast podcast, we're working on introducing a Paracast video channel. Plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. With Dr. John Brandenburg about death on Mars. And Dr. Brandenburg, we're looking now at the symptoms, the things you see on Mars that indicate there were nuclear explosions in the past. Let's go on with this. Big bada boom, as they say.
Big bada boom.
As they say in The Fifth Element.
That's right. I was just watching. It's funny. I thought, yeah, that's from The Fifth Element. Big bada boom. First words of English, The Fifth Element speaks. So basically, at the time when he made this comment, it was pretty scary because we were investigating what looked like remains of a dead civilization on Mars, and then this guy, and we're deep in the cold, icy depths of the Cold War, and then this guy says it looks like Mars was nuked because of this isotope.
No, we've been able to date these events. We've been able to date them, and it happened quite some time ago.
Yes. This looks like, based on the half-life of the isotopes involved, it looks like this happened like 500 million to 250 million years ago. So this was a long time ago. Whoever did this is long gone. Hopefully cosmic karma has caught up with them.
Yeah, we're talking, we didn't even have dinosaurs yet.
All we had was cockroaches, which are notorious for being able to survive nuclear radiation, as it turns out.
How does this time to the Permian?
That's what I mentioned in the book.
Because we had a huge
really odd thing on Earth that happened kind of during that period was the Great Permian extinction, which the cockroaches survived, and almost nothing else survived. The Earth almost turned into a Mars. Everything died. Even the oceans died, which when the Chicxulub asteroid hit and wiped out the dinosaurs, the oceans did okay.
Yeah, they did fine, yeah.
The oceans sea life was really not that disrupted, except in the immediate area of the blast. The oceans recovered quickly. But in the Permian extinction, everything died.
Yeah, we're talking a lot of trilobites biting the big one.
Absolutely. Yeah, the oceans were dominated by these squid-like creatures, and they all died. In fact, in the book, I urge people to investigate if in the sediments associated with the Great Permian extinction, if there are any kind of nuclear residues that look like they could have been a result of a nuclear explosion. So hopefully some brave scientists will bring that data forward. You got to understand a thing about a lot of scientists. A lot of scientists don't want to make big discoveries. They just kind of want to do their job.
What's up with that?
They're rather most scientists are rather risk adverse.
Why are they so risk adverse and wimpy?
Well, it's because of money. You work hard to get your PhD, and then the tenure system, to get tenure at a university, you have to really keep your mouth shut and your head low at faculty meetings for like 7 years. It
and then really you can get a little frisky.
Selects people who are very cautious and not given to making and risk. They're risk adverse and more worried about their reputation than getting the Nobel Prize for anything. So it's a rare scientist who makes a big discovery and goes charging out there. You have to have it's a rare thing.
So you basically need two guys in a garage or a kitchen building the next great personal computer. The other thing I would want to ask you, in addition to not being risk averse, the fact that we don't have the government research money we used to have. Therefore, we have to rely on private industry, and private industry is not going to put money into research unless they can monetize that money. They're not going to develop a new drug unless they can sell it to you for $10,000 a month.
Exactly.
Right.
It's all about money.
Yeah, and in your case, you are totally outside of your realm of professional expertise. So you kind of you sort of have a get out of jail free card because it's more of a hobby.
It was when I showed up to this conference and gave a talk on the Mars ocean. I was like a swashbuckling buccaneer walking into the place because there was a guy who talked about lakes on Mars. He was obviously just shaking in his boots up at the podium. And I realized I can speak freely here because they don't know where I live. I don't, they can't retaliate against me for making this outrageous idea because I don't work at JPL. I don't. I'm not at a university and trying to get tenure, something like that. I was at the time a defense contractor.
Right, and they're all manly men aboard a manly ship doing manly things with other manly men.
That's right. I was a Beltway Buccaneer.
Okay, we should talk like a pirate then, right?
We should.
Now, don't even ask me to arg. I can argue with the best of them. I can argue with the best of them.
What's the pirate's favorite element is argon.
Oh, God. They say I tell bad jokes. This is bad beyond belief.
Oh, man. And I thought Gene was bad. Oh.
I know. The joke when we were working in Washington, D.C. in the Reagan arms buildup was that people were the government scientists and the people at the universities called us Beltway bandits, and I would say I take exception to that term. It's Beltway Buccaneers.
Let's really frame this in a way without too many segues. Let's go from the story. So we have evidence.
Sure.
All right, so enough of the pirate talk. We are not pirates here on the Paracast, and we don't play them on TV. So, some kind of nuclear explosion. Now let's talk about life on Mars before we bring it all together. So we have the oceans.
We had an ocean.
Right. And therefore we have the beginnings of life on Mars. Okay, so how far would life have developed on Mars? Because every time you talk to me about the Dead Sea bottoms and everything, I think of John Carter of Mars and Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Right, exactly. In fact, the oceans may have receded, but that doesn't mean that life wasn't dug in on Mars. I mean, the Barsoomian Mars the oceans had dried up. In fact, that was one reason. The person who first suggested Mars oceans, by the way, was Percival Lowell. He suggested that it looked like Mars, it had oceans, and they dried up. And so this was picked up by Edgar Rice Burroughs, who apparently studied all of...
Right. He also claimed that there were canals that were...
Oh yeah. Well, that was also the best science available at the time. And but Mars and Earth started out very much the same. And on Earth, we know that life began almost as soon as there was a liquid ocean. As soon as you start finding sedimentary rocks laid down by water, liquid water, you find apparently microfossils from Earth life. So they've pushed it back.
That's like 1 point something billion years ago too. So we're going back a ways.
We'll go back another ways in a moment. Dr. John Brandenburg is here to tell us all about death on Mars. Right. And no more ARGs, please. With Gene and Chris, you're in the Paracast. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on our distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right. That's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100-foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows. Pause and rewind live TV. Even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
I was thinking Chris would do something like the Paracast or something. The Paracast. Oh, that's even better. Anyway, Dr. John Brandenburg is not a pirate. He doesn't talk like a pirate.
No, I don't like pirates.
And we're dealing with death on Mars here. And we're dealing with life on Mars. About what you say is that the path of life on Earth and the path of life on Mars followed a simultaneous path.
That's right.
Very much so. Now, how far did life on Mars go before we had this nuclear incident?
Well, Mars apparently had Earth-like conditions for about 4 billion years. And that's the point when the ocean started to dry up. Now, Mars apparently had a greenhouse, a planetary greenhouse like the planet Venus does now. And to some extent, the Earth has a planetary greenhouse. which we're improving upon as we speak.
There was a much more robust atmosphere.
Right. So Mars had a very much an Earth-like atmosphere, a heavy greenhouse going, and it allowed liquid water, and it had an oxygen atmosphere, apparently. That's why Mars is red. And the oxygen comes from photosynthesis. In fact, one of the most startling things about the present atmosphere of Mars is the fourth most abundant molecule in the Mars atmosphere today is oxygen, and they can't explain it by any model they have. And apparently there's photosynthesis, a lot of photosynthesis on Mars right now. And in fact, you know what the color of the plants are probably on Mars? They're red. If you go look at seaweed from places where the light isn't as strong, it is red. Because red.
So there still appears to be something that's helping perpetuate the scant amount, but relatively speaking, but there still is a significant amount of oxygen there. So
right, there is,
even though it's nowhere near the.
There's enough oxygen that if you had a special compressor, you could actually harvest oxygen from from Mars atmosphere.
Wow.
And walk around with a spacesuit. As long as its batteries held out, you'd be able to have oxygen from the air on Mars. And,
right. And the temperature, what's the temperature variation now? And what was the temperature range back then when it was?
I can tell you the temperature on Mars at the equator is warmer than it is here in Wisconsin. Mars actually gets to about 70 degrees on the equator on a summer afternoon, but at night it gets very cold. It gets down like 100 below.
So you got to have those space heaters going full speed.
They got to have space heaters, right?
So do Martians have space heaters? Okay, but I'm trying to get to the clarification here, which is, all right, so life begins on Mars, life begins on Earth. Your speculation here is that life on Mars, if it was intelligent life, would be similar to us.
Well, it's a similar planet to us. Apparently, Mars and Earth had very similar conditions up until about 1 billion years ago. Then things then some things happened that started changing things on Mars, so they were less Earth-like. But still, I think things were basically Earth-like maybe until 500 million years ago. That would be 4 billion years of Earth-like conditions. And a lot can happen in 4 billion years. You leave a group of people in a locked room for 4 billion years. Anything you could imagine would happen in there. And on Earth, we had all of the biological evolution. And part of that evolution was driven by the fact that Earth had a very heavy greenhouse, so that only bacteria that could survive high temperatures survived. And so one of the reasons you couldn't have advanced life on Earth is that, like, if the seawater is hot, it doesn't hold as much oxygen. The planet has to cool off, in other words, to start having really oxygen-based sea life that uses oxygen in its metabolism, and you can have fish. You're basically stuck with bacteria until you get a nice oxygen level in the water, and that means low temperature before you can have even trilobites. And so Earth had to kind of cool off. And so Mars kind of had a head start because it was a cooler planet, and it was farther from the sun, so it didn't have this big temperature barrier to overcome. And these things are very complicated. You could sit there and program a computer with a big planetary simulation and watch it run for years to simulate the how Mars environment evolved. But basically, until about 500 million years ago, it was like Earth. And that means just about anything you could imagine evolution producing, including humanoid beings, intelligent beings, could happen on Mars. In fact, I tell other scientists, I said, we are in a very poor position at this time to forbid anything happening on Mars.
That kind of begs the question, do you think that the JPL boys and Opportunity and some of the probes have discovered real evidence of complex life and they're keeping it quiet? Or do you think that...
I have talked to some Mars scientists who are deeply plugged into the Mars establishment, and they have told me that there is a Mars cover-up going on, that they have found stuff that they are not revealing. But, they didn't show me the stuff. They just told me that there is a Mars cover-up.
To what extent? Do they go into how much is being covered up?
I'll give you a really... one of the people I talked to pointed to a novel written by a Mars scientist named Charles Hartman, and it's called Cities of Gold. And I got it and read it. And it's really funny because it's about this guy who's hired by a subdivision developer out of Chicago. He's trying to build a subdivision in Arizona, and the guy is hired. He's an archaeologist out of work, so they hire him. He's just out of school, and so they hire him. He's supposed to write colorful brochures talking about the archaeological, the history of the Southwest, and to basically to pimp the new subdivision as being a kind of in a historical area. And he finds a artifact at this place called Red House, which is an old ruin in the middle of this supposed to be a subdivision.
Let's find out what he found on the other side with Dr. John Brandenburg and Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
Not just an alternative to the mainstream media. We're the premier independent talk radio network. We are GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. Lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
We love that you're passionate about GCN. And whether you're a listener, a business owner, or a radio industry professional, we've redesigned the new GCN newsletter to keep you in the know. Get updates on your favorite GCN shows and hosts. Go to GCNlive.com and click on the banner in the upper left corner. Just for signing up, you're automatically entered for monthly giveaways. Start receiving your newsletter today. The future of talk radio. GCN.
It's no secret that government and big business buy in bulk and get huge discounts not available to the little guy. Until now. Introducing a breakthrough crowd buying website where people can join together, buy in bulk, and get massive discounts on millions of popular products. It's TogetherSave.com. TogetherSave.com. You can save 20, 30, or even 50% off tablets, smartphones, cars, appliances, textbooks, sports equipment, video games, and much more. All with free delivery. Check it out. TogetherSave.com. Visit now and start group buying today at TogetherSave.com.
There's a man named Dr. Joel Wallach who is anything but your typical doctor, both a veterinarian and naturopathic physician. Doc asks, why does the United States spend more money on health care by far and still rank 50th in health and longevity worldwide? He believes that people should empower themselves with a basic understanding of nutrition, take charge of their health, and attain optimal health and longevity through nutrition, not by toxic prescription drugs that lead to side effects and more toxic prescription drugs. Doc Wallach's message is resonating with an increasing number of Americans who are waking up to all the big government, big pharma, and big insurance manipulation of our healthcare system. I'm George Norrie, and I like what Doc Wallach is saying and doing to enlighten people about health care. Visit criticalhealthnews.com and listen to Dr. Wallach's Deadly Recipes lecture. It makes a lot of sense, and I urge you to join our Critical Health News team. Go to criticalhealthnews.com. That's criticalhealthnews.com.
The Freeze-Dry Guy presents freeze-dried turkey, freeze-dried ham, and the no-bake casserole unit February sale. Listen, if you trust the Freeze-Dry Guy, as thousands have for their emergency food supply since 1970, don't wait to hear how great this deal is, because it's unlimited supply. Call 866-404-3663 and ask for our new turkey and ham unit. Normal retail price $359.94. Sale price $251.94. You save $108. And it's chock full of high-quality, great-tasting freeze-dried diced turkey and ham from Mountain House, the gold standard in long-term storage products. Or get the Freeze-Dry Guy's no-bake casserole unit. 153 servings per case at normal retail price of $215.94. Sale price $172.75. You save $43.19. But supplies are limited, and we always pay shipping right to your door within the lower 48 states. Call 866-404-3663 and make FreezeDryGuy.com a favorite and check for monthly specials. Don't miss the Freeze-Dry Guy's February sale. Call 866-404-3663 or visit FreezeDryGuy.com.
Hi, this is Joshua P. Warren, author of The Poor Man's Paranormal, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
He's trying. Dr. John Brandenburg joins us. The book is Death on Mars from Adventures Unlimited Press. That place. Okay.
So I'm basically talking about a book written by a very well-known Mars scientist, and he will probably deny any connection to Mars. But he wrote this interesting novel about a guy who finds a Spanish helmet at this site of this place called the Red House, which is a old collapsed pueblo built by the Indians. And he finds this historic artifact there, and he reports it to the person who's building the subdivision. The guy says, "Have you told anyone else about this?" And the guy says, "Well, no," and says, "Thanks, Bill. Just go home and take the rest of the day off." And then what happens is they send hitmen from Chicago after this guy. Because if they find a real historic artifact, the subdivision will be declared an archaeological site, and they can't build it. So there's millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of subdivision money is going to go down the drain if this artifact is real. And so the subdivision the developers, who's out of Chicago anyways, his response is to just hire some hitmen to try and kill this guy.
That sounds like any place where something is discovered.
Yeah,
so what it is the scenario in the novel, which is set on Earth, is that at the Red House, he finds a intelligent artifact. And this throws everything into doubt, and he has to flee for his life. Fortunately, the developer's secretary, who he's having an affair with, warns him that Tony Lacuna from Chicago is coming looking for him. And so he manages to escape, and then gives the artifact to the museum where it gets publicized. So the subdivision gets declared as a archaeological site, and they can't build a subdivision. The subdivision guy goes out of business, and the book ends with him meeting the secretary in Spain, where they're on the lam, and so it was the idea of finding an artifact in a place that disrupts everyone's economic plans. And
still trying to.
Like I said, the guy who told me this said that this was written by this one Mars guy as kind of a allegory of the situation on Mars.
All right. Well, we're trying to get this straight about Mars. Okay. So if there are humanoid creatures on Mars and they are intelligent,
or there were, which is more to the point, how far did they get before the catastrophe hit? I think that's what we're trying to speculate. Is there any way to know? No, not until you send astronauts up there. Until you get people on the any archaeologist will tell you have to dig to find out the truth at an archaeological site. That's why they call them digs. You have to get in there with shovels. It's very hard work. You shovel through all of this debris. You finally find clay tablets or artifacts or pots or metal weapons, something that then establishes the technological level. In fact, we could drive, if you landed a rover at Cydonia Mensa and drove it around for a year, you'd probably see nothing that you would recognize as artificial. You'd see rubble and just some hills that you recognize from space, or the face on Mars, or the pyramid, but they wouldn't look very impressive at all if you drove around with a rover at close range. All you'd see was a bunch of jumbled rock.
So basically speaking here, so none of the Mars probes are capable or able to find anything. Now, is there something that could be done?
Unless they got really lucky.
Unless they got very lucky, okay. Is there something that could be done in their design or the programming that could be maybe redone from Earth to make it more possible for them to find anything like this relic of a past civilization?
I have advocated that you just send people. Just people do these things much better than any machine. By the time you're done programming a machine to do that, you spend as much money as just sending people.
Well, we sure don't seem to know that, do we?
No. Well, Mars is big business. This country Uncle Sammy has spent probably $10 billion on Mars. That's a lot of money. In fact, and believe it or not, until Cydonia, and I point this out in the book, until Cydonia and the ocean on Mars that came from the Cydonia investigation, Mars was being written off as a scientifically interesting planet. They were moving out they talked about Europa or Titan, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Mars, in fact, the Mars Observer was supposed to be the last probe to Mars. And other planets in the solar system are like that, like Mercury. They sent one probe, back in the 60s. It looked like the moon. So they said, well, that's not very interesting. So we finally sent a new probe and mapped. We didn't even have complete maps of Mercury until about last year when they sent a recent probe. And it's not a very interesting place. It just looks like the moon. And so people had kind of written off Mars the same way. When the Mars, the life experiments failed to find clear evidence of life. But now Mars is big business. It's a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Mars equals money.
All right, so Mars equals money. So therefore, they shouldn't wait till 2035, 20 years from now, to send humans to the Mars. They need to do it right now.
I'm with Elon Musk. Let's just go. Enough horsing around and land at Cydonia.
Well, this is the whole big issue here. We figured out how to get to the moon in 1969.
Yep.
Fine. With technology that is far, far, far more primitive than what we have now. But we still can't figure out how to get to Mars. So
No,
is it
we
mostly
can
the
get to
will
Mars.
rather than the money and the technology? I mean, in recent years, forgetting about which political party you favor, in recent years, it appears to me the plans that have been brought forth to continue space exploration have been basically pathetic.
No, we just need, if we had Saturn V's, the moon rocket, we'd get to Mars pretty easy. It's a question of money. Mars costs more. The astronauts didn't even have a toilet on the way to the moon. They wore diapers. That's how Pampers got invented. There was a 5-day mission, and they just wore diapers all the way. And you can't do that on the way to Mars. It takes like 6 months to get to Mars. And so you have to send really several modules from the space station as a ship to Mars. And then by the way, the most dangerous part of a human Mars mission is coming back. It's not getting to Mars. Landing on Mars, since it has an atmosphere, you can use a heat shield and a big parachute, and you can basically land on Mars pretty easy.
And one more thing. If you order a 1-year or a 5-year subscription to the Paracast Plus, we'll send you a free copy of the ebook version of Stalking the Tricksters from Chris O'Brien. That famous book, free, with a Paracast Plus subscription of 1 or 5 years. Let's make this easy break. Very easy. Dr.
Right.
John Brandenburg is with us. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast. A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is the coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and the coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MyTV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MyTV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows. Pause and rewind live TV. Even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MyTV. 1-855-905-MyTV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MyTV. 1-855-905-MyTV.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document? Worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average over 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
The human body is extraordinary. Despite all the stresses we inflict upon it, it still works hard to stay in balance. Thousands upon thousands of people rely upon Heart and Body Extract to help their body stay balanced. This excellent 100% natural herbal formula helps maintain healthy blood pressure levels, cleans arteries, promotes good circulation, balances cholesterol, and more. HB Extract, paired with healthy lifestyle choices like good nutrition and exercise, can give you a life free of pain, sickness, and fear. Recapture your youthful vitality and experience your body healing itself with the aid of HB Extract. It's extremely effective and it starts working in just days. Visit hbextract.com to learn more and to read scores of testimonials from satisfied customers. And we've never increased our price in over 10 years. That makes Heart and Body Extract as great a value now as it was the first day we sold it. A healthy heart is a happy heart. Call 866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Chris sounds like he went to Mars without the septic tank.
Well, one thing you mentioned in your book, John, is a good way to approach Mars is base your initial flights to Phobos or
right.
to one of the moons of Mars, because
Phobos is a staging area. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense to me.
It's a ready-made space station. You just dig a few feet into the you land some space station modules on Phobos and cover them with Phobos dirt, and they're then shielded from radiation. And they complain that Mars doesn't have a magnetic field. That means it doesn't have a Van Allen belt either. So it's actually safer to be in orbit around Mars than it is around Earth in terms of radiation. And so we use Phobos. We land. In fact, you just dock with Phobos. You don't actually land on it. You establish a base camp. Like if you're climbing Mount Everest, you establish a big base camp and then stage the ascents out of the base camp, which is like the base camp would be like halfway up the mountain. And so you stage everything from Phobos, and the first landing group is only 3 people, and you just say you're going to stay there on Mars for a couple of years. We're not, until we get all the bugs worked out for coming back, just stay there. It's like an expedition to Antarctica. People stay there for several years. And so then, because the most dangerous part of a Mars mission is launching from Mars surface and trying to come home. That involves a big rocket. Mars is a big planet, and it's got a lot of gravity. It's nothing like it's about 40% of Earth's gravity. So it takes a big rocket to get off of Mars, back up into orbit, and then dock with a mothership and come home. So the best thing to do is then get into Mars orbit, dock with a ship from Phobos, and so do all the heavy lifting at Phobos, and then the Mars base at Cydonia on the surface, you just stage out of Phobos. And for psychological reasons also, it's very important that the people at Cydonia, the landing team, they look up and they see Phobos go over twice a day, and I think it orbits about 3 times a day.
It's comforting.
It is, because like Robert Louis Stevenson, the thing, the noted author, the thing that killed him in his he was a vigorous old man, and he visited Pompeii that they had just dug up. And he saw all of these bodies that were buried by the volcanic eruption there, and he wrote, the last thing he wrote in his diary was City of Death. The shock of seeing all of this death at Pompeii killed him.
Before we die not hearing the answer, I'm not really getting a clarification on this. Back to the civilization on Mars.
Yes.
How far did they get before the nuclear blast happened? And that's before we find out who might have done it.
Right. We don't know how far they got. Just based on a kind of gut feeling, looking at the ruins, it looks like it was Bronze Age, like ancient Egypt, building the pyramids, or like the Mayans, the Aztecs. It does not look like it was an advanced civilization. Now, we won't know until we have people there digging through the ruins. It is entirely possible that they reached a high level of technology, that maybe they did this to themselves, but it doesn't look like it. I have to just give my best judgment as a scientist. That's my best judgment until I get more information. So that's one thing that makes this look so tragic and pathetic, is that it looks like it was a primitive civilization, and somebody came along and dropped enormous hydrogen, kind of Death Star kind of devices from outer space, had them blow up in midair. I mean, there would be no point in building a giant planet killer of your own, and then, if you wanted to destroy the planet, all you had to do is set it off on the ground. You wouldn't loft it into space or set it off in midair. But apparently whoever did this dropped these things out of space. And like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they set off the warheads above the ground. We found what is called trinitite, which is atomic melt glass, at both sites. I just got a paper accepted to a major scientific conference just discussing the explosions.
Okay, so if they didn't do it, it had to have been done from outsiders. Outsiders being an advanced extraterrestrial race that, for reasons unknown, went to Mars and shot off their load.
Right. Well, if you look at human history, advanced civilizations have wiped out primitive civilizations many times in Earth's history, just because
we have a bad habit of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the human beings have a murderous streak running through them, and that history just like the Tasmanians, where people who lived in Tasmania, they were completely wiped out by the Australian and European settlers who arrived there. And so it was, there is a fellow named Harrison who actually wrote that this comes to what's called Fermi's paradox. Let's say we're finding this on Mars, that this is what we found on Mars. Now we look out to the rest of the universe and it is silent. It's not like, a delegation from the Galactic United Nations has arrived and given us forms to fill out to apply for membership. Nothing like that has happened, at least it's acknowledged publicly.
Well, if they did it, of course, we'd have to depend on the government to reveal it. But regardless of that...
Of course, Uncle Sammy would tell us about that.
Of course they will. They have a lot of things they have to
That's
tell
how
us.
everything ended in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The government told everybody, right?
Okay, so regardless of that...
if you point a radio telescope around in the stars, you hear nothing. You can't. There's no government cover-up on radio telescope observations of intelligence signals from space. This was the first person who noticed this was Enrico Fermi, the great physicist. he said, well, if the human race is typical of intelligent life in the universe, and this is somebody who just fought World War II, invented the atomic bomb, was working on the hydrogen bomb, and he said the human race is very noisy. It likes to play its stereos really loud, sends out a lot of radio broadcasts, soap operas, political propaganda, everything imaginable, commercials. And he said the human race is very young compared to the rest of the universe. The universe should be full of people like us, and they should be making a lot of radio noise. But it's silence. What does that mean? He put it very emphatically. He says, where the hell are they? Where are the people we would expect to be out there in the stars right now, sending us accidentally their radio broadcasts? You know, Mad Bill Bazersky's used cars in Alpha Centauri, for instance. And he said it is a paradox that the nature of life is to spread to all places it can and to be very noisy, and yet the universe is silent as a ghost town. It's silent as a cemetery. That's called Fermi's paradox. And one of the people who addressed this was a guy named Edward Harrison. I discussed this in the book, who said perhaps there are forces in the universe that are intelligent that run around squelching young, noisy civilizations such as ourselves, so they won't become a nuisance later.
Well, the other question being here is, how do you become that race to decide how to get rid of the nuisances? And if they got rid of the Martians, why haven't they gotten rid of us? That's an interesting question to ask, and I want your answer on the other side. Dr. John Brandenburg is with us with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
We are the premier independent talk radio network, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Attention listeners, SurvivalLife.com is giving away free EverStrike permanent matches for a limited time only. These matches are waterproof and will light in any weather condition, rain, snow, or sleet. It will still throw a spark. Its built-in ferro rod strikes at 3,000 degrees, and it is good for 15,000 strike. Normally, $15. Today, it's free. Get yours at freewaterproofmatch.com. Again, that's freewaterproofmatch.com. Hurry, supplies are limited. Visit freewaterproofmatch.com today.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
You pick up the receiver. With your heart racing and sweat dripping from your forehead, you finally muster the courage to dial the number to call into your favorite talk radio show. It rings once, twice, and then...
Hello, it's GCN. What's your name and the state you're calling from?
Surprised you got through, you squeak out.
Jason from Minnesota. Please hold.
As you patiently wait for your turn, you begin to daydream about being a famous talk radio host and what it would be like to have your own show.
Jason from Minnesota, you're up.
Millions of loyal listeners worldwide waiting to call and talk to you.
Caller, are you there?
Cheering crowds surround you, calling out your name.
Jason! Going once, twice. Okay, we gotta move on to the next caller.
You blew it.
Huh? Wait, no!
Interact with the host you're listening to right now, online at GCNlive.com. Click on the community link. Engage with other listeners. Ask questions. Start debates. Don't agree with the host? Let them know. Be a part of the community at GCNlive.com.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Chris has volunteered, by the way, to offer a free copy of one of his best books ever, Stalking the Tricksters. Oh, yeah. Free ebook version. How do you get a copy? Very simple. You sign up at plus.theparacast.com. That's the Paracast Plus at plus.theparacast.com. You sign up for a 1 or 5 year subscription. You can order it monthly to save money, but if you order a year or 5 years, you get the book. You also get the ad-free version of the show with a higher resolution audio. So when Dr. John Brandenburg decides to cough, you hear it clear and pristine. We also have the After the Paracast podcast. We've got improvements to the way that you can get the show now. So check it out if you haven't done so already. Plus.theparacast.com. Okay, so we are talking here, John, about the civilization that wants to put us down. They put down the Martians with nuclear weapons. Why not those Earthlings? Those nasty, pesky Earthlings.
Well, they've got a big to-do list. We're on the list, but they just haven't gotten to us yet, I guess. In the book, I say that why wait around for them to show up? Why don't we go to Mars, find out exactly what the hell happened up there, and that's the best way to ensure it doesn't happen to us. Go to Mars.
How can you say that? If an advanced civilization comes here, they're 1,000 years ahead of us, and they want to nuke us, how do we stop them?
Well, and all we're doing is just scientific reconstruction. And by the way, what I'm hoping is that scientists at Livermore and Los Alamos, where I used to work at Livermore, are trying to model the explosions already using their big computer codes. Good luck to you guys. But anyway, well, the bombs were not that complicated. I mean, we could have built those things. That doesn't mean that this thing of 1,000 years ahead of us. A lot of cultures they reach a certain level of technology and they decide they don't need it anymore. And they just stop. They stop developing new technology.
Well, this kind of leads us to one of the questions that has been posted at our question bank at forum.theparacast.com. This comes from Fast Walker, he's been a member of the forums for about a year.
Yes.
And he's a big fan of yours. And he has a question.
All right, Fast Walker, what's your question?
Okay.
Say it fast.
Yeah, I'm walking. Okay. Given that there's a
civilization. Fast walker or fast talker?
Given that there is a civilization advanced enough to travel vast distances and have the ability to nuke another planetary civilization out of existence, why would they destroy the biosphere of the planet when an advanced civilization could merely use some sort of nanotechnology and introduce a virus or some other disease, or use a neutron bomb that is genetically tailored to wipe out the offending intelligent race? Why take out the whole biosphere?
Well, remember in Star Wars, there are two movies that actually had this sort of scenario, and one is the famous movie Dark Star, which I urge everybody to go watch. It's the predecessor of both Star Wars and Alien. But it's the first movie by John Carpenter, by the way, Dark Star. And it features them dropping these big planet burners on planets that they deem to be unstable. It's just a bunch of roving technicians. They're not thinking deeply about anything. And then the other example is, of course, the Death Star in Star Wars, which was complete overkill. I mean, they blew up the entire planet. And, sort of like, Governor Tarkin, why did you destroy Mars? And he said, because Dantooine would be far too remote to be a good example. They wanted to scare people. People do things like that. When the Romans destroyed Carthage, they they sowed the ground with salt so nobody could rebuild the city.
Right. Yeah, we firebombed Dresden, we firebombed Tokyo.
When you introduce intelligence into a scenario, the possibilities just explode. The number of possible scenarios, and when I first discovered my original hypothesis, by the way, this was natural nuclear reactors that went unstable and exploded on Mars.
Yes, you expressed that in a previous appearance on the show.
Right, and that was because that was the simplest explanation. That natural nuclear reactors happened on Earth, I was only presupposing a much larger one on Mars. That was well received, by the way, by the scientific community. The only problem was it didn't fit the evidence. There was no big crater. That would have left a big crater. There's no crater. Whatever happened blew up in midair, and the neutron, the xenon 129, is from fast neutron reactions, not moderated ones. It's from plutonium production and nuclear testing is what creates the xenon 129 on Earth. So to just answer Fast Walker's question, I don't know why they did what they did. It is it looks very evil.
Well, at the very least, it's rude.
Yeah, it looks very evil. You know, why do people mutilate cattle and leave them for their owners to find? Well, in a lot of countries, people do that. People do that to other people to scare them. They want to scare people.
One is reminded of
somebody may have wanted to make an example out of Mars to scare other people. Imagine a universe that is where intelligent life is the greatest danger to intelligent life in the universe is other intelligent life. And
that brings to mind Stephen Hawking's observation that anything out there that would encounter our noisy planet would probably be marauders going from planet to planet, raping and pillaging.
Stephen Hawking is at heart a pirate like myself.
And maybe he watched the movie Independence Day too often, because that's the theme of Independence Day, that we have this race of extraterrestrial locusts who will pillage a planet, then they'll move on to the next one.
That's right. And you can imagine, well, I mean, that was the Mongols. The Mongolian tribes were nomads, and they had no use for cities and urban life. They destroyed cities. Afghanistan used to be a very rich, fertile area, and then the Mongols came through and just killed everybody. Made pyramids of heads, and they actually destroyed Baghdad too. They killed everyone in the city.
Yeah, and if a city wouldn't surrender and the walls were too high, they just fling diseased bodies, catapult them.
Exactly.
Bacteriological warfare.
Exactly. They were pretty bad customers, and they won a lot of their battles through sheer terror. People were afraid to fight them. They would just surrender when they showed up, and so unfortunately, there are many examples on Earth of people doing things like this. And when I first encountered, when I found out that the natural nuclear reactor scenario would not work, it was, as Sherlock Holmes said, I've got a perfect explanation for what happened, except the dog didn't bark. And because the dog didn't bark, this is a murder case and not a, death by natural causes or something,
So when the civilization on Mars was destroyed, the question remains, who done it? Why they do it? Why haven't they done it here?
Well,
why are we still here? Before we go into that, we have Dr. John Brandenburg. His book is called Death on Mars. We have Gene and Chris. Well, you're in
the Paracast.
Neighbors, are you tired of dealing with a slow web hosting provider? Well, check out A2 Hosting and their screaming fast Swift server platform. They even have SSDs that load pages 300% faster than the competition. Ready to give your site a speed boost? Well, tell you what, neighbors, head on over to a2hosting.com. That's A2, that's number 2, a2hosting.com. Check out their Prime hosting account. And get this, neighbors, They're even giving you an exclusive 25% off discount for all our listeners. 25%. And remember, their Guru Crew support team is standing by 24/7, 365 days a year to answer any of your questions. Now, to get the discount, use the coupon code GENE when you check out.
Have you ever felt like the United States government knows way too much about your financial affairs? I continue to hear stories about property seizures, frozen bank accounts, confiscation of stocks and bonds. It makes me wonder if the U.S. citizen will ever again have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, with the Drug and Money Laundering Act, the IRS Revenue Ruling 6045 of 1984, and the Trading with the Enemy Act and Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order of 1933, some precious metal holdings are subject to government intervention. For this reason, Midas Resources has prepared a report explaining the boundaries of trading precious metals privately. Whether if you have any intention of trading with Midas Resources or not, I have instructed my representatives to give this report out free. Call for your free copy at 1-800-686-2237. When investing, always proceed with caution. Again, call 1-800-686-2237. Exercise your legal right to trade metals privately. 1-800-686-2237.
The Freeze-Dry Guy presents freeze-dried turkey, freeze-dried ham, and the no-bake casserole unit February sale. Listen, if you trust the Freeze-Dry Guy, as thousands have for their emergency food supply since 1970, don't wait to hear how great this deal is, because it's unlimited supply. Call 866-404-3663 and ask for our new turkey and ham unit. Normal retail price $359.94. Sale price $251.94. You save $108. And it's chock full of high-quality, great-tasting freeze-dried diced turkey and ham from Mountain House, the gold standard in long-term storage products. Or get the Freeze-Dry Guy's no-bake casserole unit. 153 servings per case at normal retail price of $215.94. Sale price $172.75. You save $43.19. But supplies are limited, and we always pay shipping right to your door within the lower 48 states. Call 866-404-3663 and make FreezeDryGuy.com a favorite and check for monthly specials. Don't miss the Freeze-Dry Guy's February sale. Call 866-404-3663 or visit FreezeDryGuy.com.
What good is a Big Berkey water filter?
We get that question a lot here at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And in a word, the answer is protection. Protection from water main breaks, E. coli contamination, environmental chemical spills, pesticide runoff, chlorine taste and smell, and all forms of fluoride. Plus, Big Berkey water filters are the original gravity water filter system and most trusted on the market for a reason. Tested by multiple independent NSF EPA certified labs, they are the gold standard in water purification. At only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. That means big savings. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get a Big Berkey today at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit our website or call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Dr. John Brandenburg is here. We're talking about the book Death on Mars, about E.T. doing in the civilization on Mars, a Bronze Age civilization, evidently, trying to look over the evidence from afar that this might have happened and still wonder why it hasn't happened here yet. What do you think, though, about UFOs? If we're talking about civilizations from other worlds, if we have UFOs here, are they not the race that may have done in the Martians?
First of all, let me tell you about my attitude about the whole UFO field. I was quite fascinated with it. I went to a lot of conferences and gave some papers. In fact, my original papers were on Mars because it's related. Found humanoids on Mars. People report humanoids in these UFO encounters. But I decided, based on some advice from my second wife, and also the fact that as a scientist, I need reliable data to try and proceed. I decided to treat the whole UFO issue to interpret it as science in a science fiction scenario. So I wrote a novel called Morningstar Pass: The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up. And this is the weird thing. I chose the locale of about half the action in the novel to be the San Luis Valley in Colorado, not knowing at the time that that was the center for cattle mutilations. I just looked on a map and decided it'd be a great place to put an alien base, secret alien base. But I was certainly aware of the cattle mutilation phenomenon and the abductions. I talked to several abductees about what they had gone through, and then wrote the novel. And I talked to some retired military people who knew something about this. And that all went into a novel, a science fiction novel. So, in a sense, it's not I'm not a scientist trying to make a hypothesis about it. I'm just trying to
fun with it.
I'm going to try and posit a scenario that makes sense. And as somebody defined the difference between fiction and real life is that fiction has to make sense, whereas real life doesn't.
So it's sounding like that you don't really take the field that seriously.
Oh, no, I actually take it seriously based on some discussions of some veterans from the military. But I decided not, since they weren't willing to testify about what they found or had experienced.
So why don't you share some of these revelations with our listeners?
Well, and this isn't a science fiction novel, is that imagine something like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The movie actually happened in the middle of the Cold War, and the government had decided that it had to find out what the aliens wanted, the Greys, and it had, gone from talking with them on radio, finally to having a meeting with them, and then allowing them to set up a base on Earth and have a scientific exchange in return for them investigating the Earth.
Now, are you in the fictional realm here, or is this revelations from your military sources?
Let's just say this is science fiction. You know what I mean?
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Rubbing my nose here.
Okay. Hypothetically, in a fictional sense, wink, wink.
Wink, wink, and not in a way where your nose gets larger.
Right. So the program of scientific exchange with the aliens in the novel has not gone very well. For one thing, the government allowed the aliens to occupy this kind of Devil's Tower, kind of like Mesa in San Luis Valley, near a mythical town called Morning Star. There was a town called Morning Star in Virginia where I was living when I wrote it, or started to write it, so that's where I took the name. It's a beautiful name. And let's just say that as the hero says to the heroine, she asks him, well, is the program gone into a snafu state? And he says, the program passed out of snafu 10 years ago. He said, and it's now far beyond FUBAR. If you're familiar with those military acronyms.
Yes, although we can't fully quote.
And we can't fully explore them on the
situation
on this,
normal.
on this public program means situation normal, all fouled up, and then FUBAR means fouled up beyond all recognition.
Yes.
And so in the novel, this has gotten completely out of hand. The secret council that's supposed to be evaluating the aliens, and it's so secret, not even the president knows what they're doing. And they regard the presidents as a transitory and dubious figures who pass in and out of history, and they continue. And
so they're not?
No, they're not subject to anybody anymore. They consider themselves the most important people on Earth, actually, because they're negotiating with the most powerful entities on Earth, aliens. And so what usually happens in Washington, D.C. when a very secret program goes completely haywire like this is there's a leak to the press. And so it's leaked to these two, of course, beautiful news anchors on this, like CNN or Fox News Network, and they want to be taken seriously as journalists, so they start investigating this thing. And they bring it down. They managed to bring down the UFO cover-up in about 6 months.
Yeah, in a perfect world. Stephen Bassett is having a wet dream if he's hearing this episode.
What's that? Who's that?
Stephen Bassett, who's the disclosure guy. He's having a wet dream. He needs a hanky to clean up.
Book, many people have told me that the book, have praised the book because it was the two heroines are so interesting.
Okay, you see what's going to happen on the internet now. They're going to say Gene Steinberg of the Paracast claims that Steve Bassett has a wet dream because they don't understand the distinction of being multiple
people. Over the heroines in my novel.
All right, but seriously speaking, let's move the novel to the side.
One is a beautiful Asian and the other is a beautiful blonde. In the novel, the aliens, the Greys, are really bad news. And one of the real breaks in the thing is that it turns out I won't give away the book, but this is the way the book begins, is the Russians, our friends the Russians, discover an alien base in Siberia.
Oh boy, let's get away from the Russians and let's get on to our next segment with Dr. John Brandenburg.
Right.
And Gene and Chris and secret aliens.
Secret alien bases.
American.
Free from the shackles of corporate America, we're the place for independent thinkers. GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows. Pause and rewind live TV. Even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
On Facebook, on the news, and in conversations with friends, we're bombarded every day with advice on how to be healthier, from gluten-free and non-GMO diets to how much exercise and sleep the body needs. But how much have you heard about alkalizing the body? AlkaVision Plasma pH drops are a holistic and natural way to get your body's pH levels back in balance. Just a few drops in water will help your body rid itself of harmful waste. And even the healthiest of diets can be complemented with your daily use of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops. Who isn't looking for more vibrance, vigor, and energy? Now buy 2 bottles of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops and get $10 off your order. Visit alkavision.com or call 800-518-7615. AlkaVision Plasma pH drops are packed with a powerful combination of the most alkaline minerals and compounds. Open the door to greater health, vitality, and zest for life. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health. Call 800-518-7615 or head to alkavision.com.
The Freeze-Dry Guy presents freeze-dried turkey, freeze-dried ham, and the no-bake casserole unit February sale. Listen, if you trust the Freeze-Dry Guy, as thousands have for their emergency food supply since 1970, don't wait to hear how great this deal is, because it's unlimited supply. Call 866-404-3663 and ask for our new turkey and ham unit. Normal retail price $359.94. Sale price $251.94. You save $108. And it's chock full of high-quality, great-tasting freeze-dried diced turkey and ham from Mountain House, the gold standard in long-term storage products. Or get the Freeze-Dry Guy's no-bake casserole unit. 153 servings per case at normal retail price of $215.94. Sale price $172.75. You save $43.19. But supplies are limited, and we always pay shipping right to your door within the lower 48 states. Call 866-404-3663 and make FreezeDryGuy.com a favorite and check for monthly specials. Don't miss the Freeze-Dry Guy's February sale. Call 866-404-3663 or visit FreezeDryGuy.com.
Hi, this is Nick Pope. You're listening to the Paracast.
I don't know what to say. We have 2 segments left.
Okay, the only way I could handle the craziness of the encounter between ufology and the real world that I know was in a science fiction scenario. But in the end, the UFO cover-up dies a violent, horrible death. I can promise you that. And,
so I take it here that in the real world, such as it is,
right,
or our imitation of reality, you do not accept UFOs as possible visitors from elsewhere.
Of course, as a scientist, I don't believe we're alone in the universe, and I don't believe we're the first people to develop space travel. So,
do you believe we're important enough for them to come here and do medical experiments and leave our butts sore?
For instance, you know what was at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, right? All of the nuclear weapons on Earth were stored at Roswell Army Air Base in 1947.
It was the only place on the planet where we had.
It was they had 5 Nagasaki-style atomic bombs.
Right, the 501st, right?
Entire nuclear weapons stockpile of the entire planet.
The elite of the elite bomber pilots and crews of the soon to be Air Force, and I think at the time the Army Air Force.
That's right. It was the Army Air Force, and I met these guys. I was at a meeting where they brought together all the Roswell, people who were still around back in it was in the 90s, and met these guys. So I believe that the accounts from Roswell are true, and so that kind of answers what do I think about ufology in general. However, how can I put this delicately? Let's just say I was much more comfortable writing about it as science fiction than I was trying to write a real book analyzing it as fact. And you can just speculate as to why I would choose science fiction.
We really don't have time to dwell on this. Let's just keep moving on.
Let's just say the same kind of forces in the universe that would mutilate somebody's cow and leave it there for them to find in the morning would be the same sort of intelligent beings that would blow up Mars, find a Bronze Age civilization there and blow it up, just as an example. So, you know what our reaction must be? We must go up to Mars, find out exactly what happened. Did the people on Mars know who did this to them? Did they have prior encounters with them? Did somebody show up in a big spaceship one day and say to the Martians, this is a real nice planet you have here. Can we have some bases here? And maybe the Martians did not give the answer required.
Yeah, it sounds like they did not have the right ritualized response.
Right. And so we have to go up to Mars. We have to become spacefaring. We have to become like Star Trek. We have to become like the Imperial Starfleet in Star Wars. We have to build that.
The sun's going to go supernova and the planet will be fried to a crisp, or an asteroid's going to hit and wipe us all out?
Well, the reason we can deal with an asteroid now, an asteroid threatens the Earth, and one that is threatening, this also has to be big. And I discussed this in a novel called Sepulveda. It's the prequel to Morningstar Pass. We can blow it up. We have plenty of nuclear weapons and plenty of rockets to deliver them. We are now, if this had happened, if we had discovered an asteroid in the 1940s or 30s on a collision course for Earth, there would have been nothing we could do about it. We didn't have
kiss our heinies goodbye.
That's right. That's what we would have done.
Yeah.
And we could have had Hans Zarkov launch his rocket and see if he could kind of deflect it. But all I'm saying is we have to become spacefaring now. We've sent out all these radio signals in this cemetery, this ghost town that is the universe, where we've now found the remains of a murder victim, apparently. We have this little campsite in this ghost town. We're going out exploring. What do we find? Somebody who apparently died of multiple stab wounds. And so we have been playing our stereos really loud here. We can't call back those radio signals.
No.
All we can do now is...
But they've only spread, about 10 light years or something at this point, right?
Oh, 50 light years.
50 light years. Okay. 100 light years.
So, and remember, when you set off a nuclear weapon in the atmosphere, it puts out a particular bunch of radio waves and electromagnetic pulse.
Right.
That you can pick that up, too. So they know we'll have nuclear weapons. And so we have to get up there. We have to become spacefaring. We have to become we have to have the Starship Enterprise with Captain Kirk commanding, and the Imperial Starfleet, etc., to face whatever the universe throws at us.
But don't we also really need a Zephram Cochrane, a scientist, to invent warp drive and make it easier?
Oh, well, we're working on that. You can have me back and talk about that on another show. I wrote another book called Beyond Einstein's Unified Field. And
warp drive.
Warp drive. We need warp drive. Well, by the way, you don't need warp drive to defend the Earth. You just need big spaceships with nuclear power and big lasers and big hydrogen bomb missiles.
I would think also that if ET used advanced nuclear weapons, they wouldn't be that far ahead of us. Now, I'll give you the wacky theory that occurs to me, which has nothing to do with your book.
Give me the wacky theory.
All right, because we have about a couple of minutes left with this segment.
Sure.
Let me give you the wacky theory. The wacky theory is there was once on Earth, thousands of years ago, a highly advanced civilization, Atlantis, Lemuria. We destroyed ourselves for whatever reason, but we were a spacefaring race, and we went up to Mars and nuked them for whatever reason. We did it.
Somebody suggested I should go to this conference and present this, and I knew the conference organizer, and I thought, I know what he'll say. He'll say that the United States government wiped out Mars using time travel.
Some guy wrote a book claiming that the Army Corps of Engineers dug the Grand Canyon.
Probably the same guy. Anyway, I'll just say that, I grew up in a rough town. I can tell you, bullies do not like a real fight. That's the last thing they want. And, they're looking for a pushover. Somebody shows up here with giant hydrogen bombs to drop on the Earth, and we're ready for them. They're they'll just leave. They'll just say, expedition canceled. There's too much trouble.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't come to that. I mean,
well,
we're having a hard enough time just not destroying ourselves with all the violence and just fratricide that's going on.
In my novel about the UFO cover-up, one of the characters says, the Greys, people are talking about how smart the Greys are, and he says, the Greys can't be that smart if they came here. They came here and were messing with us. They can't be that bright.
Maybe Nick Redfern in his book Final Events, the Collins Elite, these real sort of Christian fundamentalists within the government think that they're harvesting souls, that these are demons harvesting our souls, and that.
Let me tell you something. If you explain anything about ufology to a Christian fundamentalist, they will immediately make the sign of the cross and go get their gun. That's what they'll do. They're not the reaction of anyone who is a Christian to the Greys and the stuff they've. Let's say there are reported entities called the Greys, and the reported things that they have done is to imagine these people as children of the devil to be dispatched immediately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's dispatch this segment immediately and get to another one.
With extreme prejudice.
Okay.
With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors, classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Are you hungry for delicious, nutritious, rich, and satisfying home-cooked meals? Discover the Vita Clay 4-in-1 Smart Organic Cooker. Unglazed Zisha clay, an ancient secret that makes this fast multi-cooker so special. Infusing your food with incredible flavors, perfect texture, vitamins, and minerals for your good health. It's a slow cooker, rice cooker, a steamer, plus a yogurt maker. Go to VitaClayChef.com and enter promo code RADIO20 for 20% off at checkout. That's VitaClayChef.com.
Attention listeners, SurvivalLife.com is giving away free EverStrike permanent matches for a limited time only. These matches are waterproof and will light in any weather condition, rain, snow, or sleet. It will still throw a spark. Its built-in ferro rod strikes at 3,000 degrees, and it is good for 15,000 strikes. Normally, $15. Today, it's free. Get yours at freesurvivallighter.com. Again, that's freesurvivallighter.com. Hurry, supplies are limited. Visit freesurvivallighter.com today.
Hi, my name is Scott Fuchs, teacher and rowing coach for over 14 years. I was sluggish, overweight, on prescription drugs, and only 30-something. Fortunately, I was referred to Dr. Z, and happy to say Dr. Z's all-natural protocols over a consistent course resolved my health issues. I'm in the best shape of my life, and most importantly, on 0 medications.
I'm Dr. Zdanowski, author of Evology, trained as a primary care physician, surgical manipulation under anesthesia, expert in nutrition, diet, weight loss, immune system, and I specialize in chiropractic. My 15 years of professional experience has taught me the 4 keys to vibrant health: a balanced musculoskeletal system, an integrated nervous system, a flowing lymphatic system, and a body filled with over 90 essential nutrients. This has been a secret too long. Actualize your potential, reverse disease. Call me, Dr. Z. 201-945-1177, 201-945-1177, evolyourself.com.
The Genesis Communications Network is one of America's premier broadcasters of captivating talk radio. We thank you for listening. Now, just imagine there are thousands of people who are just as passionate about radio as you are. But what you may not realize is how easy and affordable it is to advertise with us. Radio commercials for your business could be heard on hundreds of radio stations across the U.S. every day. We can help you by creating an effective radio advertising campaign for your company. From script writing to producing your commercial, just like the one you're listening to right now. No other network provides the level of customer service we do. When it comes to radio advertising, we are your one-stop shop. And no matter how big or small your business is, we can help. Email us at advertise@gcnlive.com, and an experienced advertising executive will help you take the first step towards driving more customers to your business or website. Advertise@gcnlive.com. Easy, affordable, effective.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
And we're extremely prejudicial on the Paracast as we dispatch the previous segment into our final one with Dr. John Brandenburg.
All right.
Death on Mars is the book. Chris, maybe you can sneak in a couple of more questions before we go.
I would love to. There's some good ones. Here's one from Latent Causes, who's been a member since just in January. Causes? And he's wondering, what is the best challenge or criticism of your ideas, and who did it come from, and what can be done by way of further research or investigation to rebuke this criticism?
Well, the criticisms I've
besides the obvious of sending a team there.
The criticisms I've heard are that, Brandenburg, you have taken a bunch of weird instances on the planet Mars, which is a different planet. And, you have interpreted them, as you put your interpretation on a bunch of coincidences. They basically say, oh, yeah, well, there was an asteroid that crashed on Mars and spread, radioactive stuff on Mars. And Mars is a weird place, so it's got a lot of xenon-129. And, they're
but that's ludicrous.
I know. Well, in fact,
that doesn't fit the facts.
I'm going to this conference, and I'm going to look at the other hypotheses that people have proposed and basically show that they are not adequate. If there was a big radioactive asteroid crashed on Mars, then there would be a big crater where the radiation is, and there's no crater. It's as smooth. It's one of the few places on Mars where there aren't any craters. I mean, of any size. Instead of a 200-mile wide crater, there's nothing. And so if there was a big asteroid that was full of radioactive stuff that landed on Mars, it would have made a big crater. And there's no crater there. So that was one of the proposals. Well, Brandenburg, there was some big radioactive asteroid that hit Mars. And I said, and caused some of this stuff. And then the xenon-129, they say, well, they said, that's just a freak thing of Mars. Mars is a weird planet.
Yeah, deal with it. It's weird, okay?
Yeah, well, no, they said a big asteroid of iodine-129 crashed on Mars and injected all the then decayed into xenon-129, which, you can, and then I asked, well, where did all the radioactive iodine-129 come from? And they said, well, we don't have to explain that. So, you get people who just say, oh, well, Mars is a different planet. It's got this weird stuff. And,
it just can't be so.
Well, you've got to admit, it's a big thing to swallow.
Yeah.
And then some people have said, why did you bring in Cydonia? And I said, because I can read a map.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with
the two hot spots are
proximity.
Correlated where the civilization sites are found. And I said, I can read a map. Am I supposed to ignore that?
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of criticisms I've encountered, is that the nuclear stuff can be, as a bunch of weird coincidences. And, it's kind of like you find a dead body in your backyard and somebody shows up and says, natural causes, so please pay no more attention.
Yeah.
Don't, if you know what's good for you, you won't ask any questions about this.
Yeah.
These things happen all the time.
Just ignore those 2 big knife wounds.
Just ignore the big knife wounds in the body.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I'm going to the conference, and I'm just going to talk about the nuclear data and the evidence for the big explosion. I'm just calling for the sake of the conference, I'm just calling it anomalous, unknown.
That's
cause.
probably a smart way to go.
Well, you can isolate the most quantitative part of this argument from the, when you get into the Cydonia pictures, those are automatically controversial.
Yeah, people's eyes glaze over.
I've shown them pictures of all of the new pictures from Cydonia, and they say, I don't even see a face.
Yeah, well, there is some question how accurate those photographs are that they may have been messed with.
And I remember showing an imaging expert the tapes from the shuttle. I mentioned this to him, and he said he was an expert at enhancing tapes. And I remember, so I went to his house, and I brought a videotape from the shuttle downlinks and showed him some of the stuff, and he says, that's strange. He says, I don't see anything unusual in these tapes.
Huh.
So I finished my beer. We were both sitting there drinking a beer and looking at. He just said, "I don't see anything unusual on these tapes. I don't know what you guys are talking about." And I finally realized, no, he doesn't see anything. Yeah. And so I just thanked him for his time. And
it's like Colonel, who's the guy in Hogan's Hero? I see nothing.
Yeah, he was doing a Sergeant Schultz.
Sergeant
in front
Schultz.
Of me. He was obviously.
Here's another question before we go here. I've got a bunch of questions I want to get to, but you've mentioned before in the past that we really could use a commercially viable hybrid fusion fission reactor. How close do you think we are to that?
We have the technology to build that.
Well, why aren't we doing that
right now?
Are the gas oil companies that
fusion is good enough? And the fission engineering, is the same as for a regular water-cooled reactor. So I think we can solve the energy crisis.
Well, I mean, just hydrogen. I mean, gosh, just
unfortunately, as you've noticed, the price of gas going up and down. We are not exactly in control of the energy supply in this country.
Well, up until this last, some people would call it catastrophic events in the oil industry. We were the largest exporter of petroleum and petroleum products.
Yep.
But we're not in control. It doesn't matter. Just a fast question here, a final question, Dr. Brandenburg.
Sure.
All right. What are the chances that we're going to really go to Mars and figure this out anytime in our lifetimes? I mean, now we're talking about 2035. And I can bet if we're still around in 2035, they'll be talking 2045.
No. I think this is going to be solved. You wake up one morning and suddenly people are saying, okay, we're going to Mars and we're landing in Cydonia. That's the way that'll happen. They'll just say, oh, by the way, we're landing at Cydonia, Menzies.
And we're doing it next week. Dr. Brandenburg, where can we find more of the stuff that you talk and write about?
Let's see. We can find, I wrote the science fiction novels under a pen name Victor Norgard. You can find that at Amazon.com. Amazon.com. You can find everything I've written.
Okay.
Under either Brandenburg or Victor Norgard is my pen name for science fiction.
You can find how to get a copy of Stalking the Tricksters by Christopher O'Brien by going to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. There you can subscribe to our new service, the Paracast Plus. And you can subscribe for 1 month for $5, a year for $50, 5 years for $175. Those who subscribe for 1 year or 5 years get the free ebook version of Stalking the Tricksters from Chris O'Brien. Subscribers also get the ad-free version, free of network ads, of the Paracast, a higher resolution copy. So when Chris does the Paracast at the end of each or most of our segments, you hear it clear as a bell. Right there, like he's sitting there talking at you, well, in mono anyway. All right? Also, the After the Paracast podcast, also coming, a Paracast Plus video channel, plus.theparacast.com. On Twitter, we are the Paracast. On Facebook, there are 2 Paracast fan clubs. Don't ask us to get rid of one because you have to kill all the content. This is what we learned from Facebook. You can't just merge 2 separate clubs or groups or anything. You have to give up one, the contents, even though members will carry over. Not a good thing. Chris has a good thing, OurStrangePlanet.com, OurStrangePlanet.com. It's his blog with updated news about his research. You can also order the print copy and the ebook versions of his books there. And if you buy a print book, he'll autograph it for you. How about them apples? John Brandenburg, thanks for joining us on the Paracast.
Hey, Gene, Chris, great honor to be on your show.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.